Welcome back to the Tezos Explained series. Today I'm with Arthur Brightman, co-founder of Tezos, and today we're going to be deep diving into Etherlink. So to kick things off, what is Etherlink and how does it technically extend the capabilities of Tezos?
Etherlink is basically the EVM compatibility layer for Tezos. It works as a smart rollup built on top of the Tezos L1. So essentially, transactions for Etherlink are posted on the Tezos blockchain. They are included in blocks by Tezos bakers. They are maintained in by Tezos bakers, but they are executed by a rollup operator. So you have a rollup operator, reads all the transactions, executes them, and then posts commitments to the state of the rollup. It's a scaling technology. So it does two things at once. It scales Tezos in terms of like number of transactions, and it acts as a compatibility layer for supporting EVM.
Why is Etherlink such a big deal for the Tezos ecosystem?
I would say middleware is the main reason. Well, there are a lot of companies in the industry that have built tools which are now really necessary for developers or for people wanting to bring their businesses on chain. A lot of these have standardized around, well, it's not that they've standardized, but they support Ethereum, of course. And in supporting Ethereum, for them, supporting other EVM type of chains is basically a change in a config file. If you need to convince every single provider to support another blockchain, there's a very high cost. And so by having this compatibility layer, we essentially access this entire ecosystem.
Do you view Etherlink as an interim scalability layer or as a long-term architectural component within Tezos?
What I would like to see on Tezos is Tezos X roadmap realized. One big rollup, which supports many programming languages, anything you want to program in. So like really a big neutral programming platform where you can deliver all types of softwares. And I see just, Etherlink becoming over time just a part of that.
Before you mentioned around Etherlink being powered by Tezos Smart Rollups, how does Etherlink's consensus mechanism differ from traditional optimistic rollups in terms of finality and security assumptions?
Yeah, so there's no consensus mechanism in a rollup. That's, I would say, what distinguishes an L2 from an L1 is like the L1 has to care about its own consensus and its own security, and L2 doesn't. Transaction in Etherlink is posted on the Tezos blockchain or in the newly activated DAO. That's the consensus being provided. All the finality is provided by the Tezos blockchain. All the settlement is provided by the Tezos blockchain. Now, as a user of Etherlink, you can get confirmations of your transactions faster because you can contact a sequencer. If you trust a sequencer, essentially, you'll know exactly what happened, and so you can reflect that in the UX of a dev, for example. If it's critical that you have the right information, then you can wait a few seconds until it's actually included into the Tezos blocks. And if you want even more guarantees, you wait a few more seconds for 2 Tezos blocks, and then you have finality. So like today, you'll have finality within 16 seconds, but in practice, you'll have confirmation in less than 1 second.
What challenges come with making Etherlink EVM compatible whilst maintaining the core benefits of Tezos?
There are small areas where you will see challenges like this. So one of those is that when you send a transaction, for example, to the sequencer for inclusion on the Tezos blockchain, the sequencer needs Tez in order to include it onto the Tezos blockchains. But the Ethereum standard, there's no notion of paying for your detectability in a different way than you're paying for gas. So how do you do that? So the way this is currently handled on the Etherlink chain is that there's some mucking happening with the gas so that it will work. It will be compatible with wallets. So you do this and it will work. Like you will be able to pay your fees that way through MetaMask and a bunch of other wallets. We're also looking right now at bringing Tezos compatibility as well in the form of Tezlink. So think of it as a single rollup. So part of it is Etherlink, part of it is Tezlink. You want the two to talk to each other. There's different ways of making it happen. If you have very, very strong compatibility and you make it so that any contract in this, an ecosystem contract can call an EVM contract and vice versa, that's the best for developers. But then you have to think of how is this viewed by Ethereum tooling? Because like I said, a lot of the value prop is having all this tooling and all this middleware work out of the box. So finding that balance is difficult.
Like is Etherlink's non-custodial architecture foundational to its design?
I don't think it's foundational to its design. The design of Etherlink is one thing, but Etherlink, like you could take the design of Etherlink and make it custodial if you wanted to. We could take it and make it non-custodial. So I think what really matters is why is it non-custodial and what does it matter? So almost every L2 out there is custodial. So all the L2s that you see on Ethereum, there's basically custody. There's no solidarity between the Ethereum blockchain and its L2s. The L2s are just smart contracts living on it. And so as long as people are going to wonder if there's a bug in the smart contracts, they are going to maintain multi-sig that can instantly upgrade the rollup. And a multi-sig that can instantly patch a bug in a rollup on Ethereum is a multi-sig that can steal all your assets. I don't think for a second that there's malice here. And I understand why people make this choice. But multi-sigs have been stolen. It has happened to Ronin, for example. They lost $600 million. You know, like hacks of those keys will happen when the bridges are big. In contrast, Etherlink is non-custodial.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. If you want to do an upgrade, you have to pass by the governance mechanism of Tezos. It's tightly coupled with it. So that's a big difference.
Yeah.
And if you look at something today like Base, for example, like, it's good performance, there's a lot of good things, it's happening, that's great. But at the end of the day, there's no difference between having your assets on Base and having your assets custodied by Coinbase.
What are the benefits of Etherlink being enshrined or a native rollup on Tezos compared to other layer 2 solutions out there?
If tomorrow as a venture, I decide, like, you know what, I want to launch a rollup on Ethereum, I would make it custodial. I don't think you have a choice. You don't want to take the risks that anything's going to go wrong. The point is, like, the Ethereum chain will not fork to protect you. The difference is that if it's an enshrined rollup on Tezos, the Tezos chain will absolutely fork to protect it because it's not just an application. It's an extension of the network. You don't want to do it with every application because if you do it with any application, it's a moral hazard. However, if you say, look, we have a chain logic and there's an extension of it, which is like how it scales, then it makes complete sense. And you don't have to be custodial. Like the magic, I would say, of proof of stake is that if stakes misbehave, you can slash it and move on. And yeah, maybe you need a hard fork. In proof of work, if the majority of your work becomes malicious, there is nothing you can do. Like, you can change your hashing algorithm. Great. You've like now destroyed the capital investments of all of your honest miners as well. Like, the situation is much, much better with proof of stake. It's a really good guarantee if you can also extend it to your rollups.
How do you see the cross-chain communication between Tezos and Etherlink evolving over time?
One of the interesting things about rollups is that they can have secure bridges with the host chain. That is what makes them really, really interesting as scaling solution. Oftentimes you'll see people scale, but the scale doesn't really work. If you wanted to scale with a system, for example, like Cosmos, there's a bunch of different chains. But the problem is, like, they have their own validators. So first of all, you don't have shared security. You're splitting your security. And then when the chains communicate with each other, they will have light client level of security at best. You have the full security of the chain when you are doing L1 to L2 communications. Yeah. The downside with optimistic rollups is that whilst transfers from the main chain to the rollup are instant, transfer from the rollup to the main chain are going to take several weeks. Yeah. There's things you can do around this. You can do some financial engineering around it, so people can pay a small fee, and basically an intermediary will be able to step in and then make what is essentially is a load to accelerate the deposit. Another way to do it is to say, well, you will scale vertically with a rollup. And so if all the activity is happening, in the rollup and the main chain is really about staking and consensus, then maybe you don't care so much about this direction of the bridge, right? If your main asset on the main chain is also Tez and you have fast withdrawals for Tez, maybe that doesn't matter as much. Way to do it very, very fast, it would be to move to validity rollup using zero knowledge proofs. However, although they're very, very throughput limited at the moment, like there's many orders of magnitude more compute involved in making proofs for zero knowledge systems than they are in running an optimistic rollup. For high throughput application, I don't think those ZK rollups or validity rollups are ready.
When do you think they'll be ready?
It could be never. The thing is, like, fundamentally, if you're always going to be much faster just executing machine code on a CPU than you are making, complicated zero knowledge proofs about it. It doesn't necessarily limit your throughput. It's not about transactions per second because you can parallelize a proof. What it limits is more how many dollars of compute do you need per transaction. And that is potentially very large. But I don't think you ever see the performance just matching the performance on an optimistic rollup.
Well, thank you, Arthur. I think that's everything we have time for today.
All right.
And catch you in the next episode of Tezos Explained.
All right. Good talking with you.